The first thing they saw was the mop. A man in pale blue maintenance uniform, cartwheels squeaking faintly against the marble floor, moving through the boardroom entrance at 7:43 in the morning, while 12 people in pressed suits sat arranged around a glass table worth more than his annual salary. Nobody looked up. That was the point. That had always been the point. A man in that uniform, with that face, in that building, was furniture. Necessary, invisible, categorically unthreatening. T. Elena Whitmore stood at the head of the table, one hand resting flat on a stack of documents, her voice low and precise. Whoever leaked our HR suppression files to the DOJ, I want a name by Friday. This inquiry does not leave this room until we control the narrative. The man with the mop stopped. He set the handle against the cart with the particular unhurried calm of someone who had rehearsed this exact moment for 14 months. When he looked up, the expression on his face was not anger. It was something quieter and more permanent than anger. My name is Marcus Cole. His voice filled the room without rising. I wrote Module FP2847, the system your entire data distribution infrastructure runs on. I didn't leak those files. I sent them directly to the DOJ 14 months ago. Exhibit 34 in their current federal filing is a recording of a threat made to my family last night. I thought you should know that before the agents outside this door come in. Elena Whitmore went very still. The room held its breath. Cut to black. 14 months earlier. Portland, October. The kind of morning where the sky sits low and gray like a lid pressed down on the city. Marcus Cole's apartment was 600 square feet of careful management. The rent was $847 a month, and the lease renewed in 11 days, and the checking account on his phone showed $94. He already knew which bill was going to be late. He'd made the calculation 3 times the night before, each time arriving at the same answer, each time setting the phone face down on the nightstand because some numbers don't improve from being looked at. He was making toast when Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, one sock on, one sock absent, backpack already strapped to shoulders that were frankly too small for it. I can't find my other sock. Second drawer on the right. She disappeared. He heard the drawer open. He heard the small, satisfied sound she made when he was correct, which was the closest thing to a victory he'd had before 6:30 a.m. in longer than he could remember. When she came back, he crouched to her level and worked the zipper on her jacket that always stuck at the bottom. Diane had meant to replace that jacket. He still hadn't. He wasn't sure why. Except that some things you keep repairing because stopping feels like agreeing to something you aren't ready to agree to. There was a photograph on the refrigerator door. A woman laughing at something off camera, mid-sentence, completely unself-conscious. Diane Cole. 4 years gone. The kind of absence that doesn't shrink, only becomes more familiar, like learning to walk with a stone in your shoe. Maya touched his sleeve. You're going to be late. I have 10 minutes. You always think you have 10 minutes. He looked at her, this child with his nose and Diane's stubbornness and a gap-toothed smile she deployed like punctuation, and felt the specific weight of everything he was responsible for keeping intact. Science fair today, he said. I know. You're going to do great. Her expression was polite and unconvinced in the way of someone who had heard a thing said often enough that the words had worn smooth. He made a note of that look, filed it somewhere important. On the number 14 bus, Marcus opened his laptop, the screen filled with back-end architecture, dense, layered, precise. His badge read M. Cole, level 2 engineer, the laminate peeling slightly at one corner. He'd earned that badge with a 3.9 GPA from Oregon State, or with 2 years building systems in his apartment before anyone would hire him, with 6 months at Whitmore Technologies during which he had, without announcement or credit, rewritten 3 of the 7 core modules the company's infrastructure depended on. The bus moved through wet streets. He kept coding. His voiceover, if there had been one, would have been brief. He understood that the work was excellent. He had always understood that. What he had taken longer to understand was that excellence in that building was not always what determined what happened to you next. The conference room on the 14th floor had 8 people in it, and the particular energy of a meeting that had already decided its own outcome before anyone sat down. Marcus had spent 11 days preparing the presentation. The numbers were not estimates. They were exact. Optimizing the database query architecture would reduce system load time from 4.2 seconds to 0.8 seconds. Annual server cost savings, $340,000, conservatively modeled. He had 3 alternative implementation paths, risk-weighted, with rollback protocols for each. He had built the thing he was proposing to improve. He knew it better than anyone in the room. He finished. The slide stayed up. Nobody spoke immediately. Derek Haynes, senior engineering lead, silver at his temples and comfortable in the way of someone who had never been required to be otherwise, tilted back in his chair. Interesting approach. A bit unconventional. We generally like proposals of this scope to come through proper channels first. I submitted this by email 11 days ago. Marcus kept his voice level. I followed up twice. Right. Derek glanced around the table with the practiced ease of a man collecting small agreements without asking for them. I think what the team needs before restructuring core systems is someone with a bit more institutional knowledge in the room. No offense intended. Quiet laughter from 2 engineers near the window. The sound was not malicious. That was almost worse. It was reflexive, thoughtless, the social equivalent of a door closing in someone's face because no one considered whether anyone was walking through it. Nobody looked at Marcus except one person at the far end of the table. Priya Nair, our back-end engineer, 31, said nothing, but her pen had stopped moving. She was looking at Derek the way someone looks at a thing they've seen before and have been trying to figure out how to name. Marcus collected his materials. I understand. Thank you for the time. His voice did not change. His face did not change. In the hallway, he stopped walking for approximately 4 seconds, one hand flat against the wall, and breathed. Then he continued to the elevator. At the server room at 4:15 p.m. smelled like conditioned air and overworked hardware. Marcus was alone in it when the alert came in, a production failure in the payment processing pipeline, the kind that escalates from yellow to red in under 90 minutes. If it hit red, the client-facing system would go down during peak transaction hours. The recovery estimate from the on-call team, 2 hours minimum. Marcus looked at the error code. Then he opened his own terminal. Priya found him there 12 minutes later, 3 monitors running simultaneously, no notes, no documentation open. He didn't need it because this was module FP2847 and he had written every line of it. Does Derek know? She asked. If I call Derek, I spend 40 minutes explaining the architecture before I can fix it. She looked at his screen. The code moving under his hands was not trial and error. It was direct, surgical, to the work of someone who could see the whole system in 3 dimensions and knew precisely where the fault was. She pulled a chair over without being asked. "Tell me what you need." 41 minutes later, the pipeline was clean. No escalation, no client impact, no record in any system that Marcus Cole had prevented a six-figure service disruption on a Tuesday afternoon. He stayed late. The floor emptied the way floors do after 5, in stages, then suddenly, all at once, until only the lights and the server hum remained. He was packing up when he opened a shared archive drive to retrieve his own files and found a folder that had not been properly permissions locked. The file name was Clinical Administrative, the kind of title designed to be overlooked. Complaint _ log _ internal _ 2018 to 2024. He opened it. 73 entries. Everyone from an employee of color. Everyone stamped with the same resolution code. No action required. And the reviewing officer on 61 of them was the same name, Derek Haynes. The remaining 12 listed Sandra Cruz, VP of People Operations. 6 years, 73 people. The same answer, every time, to every version of the same question. Marcus sat without moving for a long time. On his desk, face up now, was his phone, Maya's contact photo, her science fair project in her arms. The expression ferociously serious in the way of someone who has decided to be taken seriously, regardless of whether anyone obliges. He understood, sitting in that empty office, that he had been treating this as a personal problem for 3 years. A question of approach, of patience, of finding the right way to make himself legible to people who had decided not to read him. He had optimized himself the way he optimized systems, looking for the inefficiency in his own presentation, assuming the output could be improved if the input was refined enough. 73 cases across 6 years was not a personal problem. He copied the folder to an external drive, closed the archive, stood up. What he didn't know, what he had no way to know, was that in the northeast corner of the ceiling, a small camera with a motion-triggered record function had been running for the last 4 minutes. And at 7:52 p.m., Sandra Cruz's phone received an automated security alert with a timestamp, a location, and a screenshot of the exact moment Marcus Cole's hand moved the files. Friday, the week Maya didn't say much. He noticed it on the drive home. The particular silence of a child who has decided something isn't worth explaining to an adult. She held her backpack in her lap instead of dropping it in the back seat. She watched the passing storefronts with an expression too composed for 8 years old. "Science fair," he started. "I got second." "That's good." Connor got first. A pause, the kind that has weight in it. His project was a volcano. Baking soda and vinegar. He painted it red. Another pause. Ms. Hartley said his project showed excellent scientific thinking. She told me mine needed a more polished presentation. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "My project calculated the water retention rates of 3 different soil types using controlled variables and a 2-week measurement cycle," Maya continued, her voice carrying the flat precision of someone reading aloud from a document. "Connor's volcano erupted once, and then it was done." He pulled to a red light and looked at her in the mirror. She was staring out the window, jaw set, and he recognized the angle of it. Diane's jaw. Diane's particular way of holding hurt inside geometry so it couldn't spill. "That's not fair," he said. "I know it's not fair." She turned to look at him directly. "I figured out that I have to be twice as good for it to count the same. I don't know why. I just know it's true." The light turned green. He didn't move for a half second. that sentence landing somewhere deep and specific, in the part of him that had spent 3 years optimizing his own behavior, looking for the variable he could adjust. His daughter had found the same conclusion at 8 years old, without anyone teaching it to her. She had simply observed the world operating and done the math. "Bah," she said gently. "Green light." He drove. His hands were steady on the wheel. Inside his chest, something had shifted into a lower, more permanent gear, and that night he called Priya from the parking lot of a Walgreens 3 blocks from his apartment, using his personal phone, standing between a cart return and a brick wall with his collar turned up against the October cold. She picked up on the second ring. "Not over any work app," he said. A beat, then, "Tell me what you found." He told her. All of it. The folder. The 73 entries. The same 2 names stamped across 6 years of buried complaints. She was quiet for a long time after he finished. The kind of quiet that means someone is recalibrating rather than waiting for their turn to speak. "I've been here 4 years, she finally said. "I filed something in my 2nd year. Informal. Derek told me it had been reviewed and resolved. I never got a case number." A pause. "I never asked for one." "How many people do you think didn't ask?" She didn't answer that. She didn't need to. "I know someone," she said. "Raymond Osei, civil rights attorney, Portland-based, 30 years of federal discrimination work. He's been building something larger than Whitmore for the last 8 months. I think you should meet him." Meanwhile, on the 22nd floor, the city lights made the window behind Elena Whitmore look like a circuit board. All grid and illumination, nothing soft about it. Sandra Cruz entered without knocking, which meant the news was bad enough to skip protocol. Cole accessed the complaint archive. "We have him on camera." Elena didn't turn around. "What does he have?" "The log. Possibly more. He had an external drive." The silence in the room had a texture to it. Elena turned from the window, and her expression in that moment was not panic. It was the focused stillness of someone running probability calculations in real time. The same quality that had made her effective, and the same quality that had made her dangerous. "This Derek has been blocking his proposals for 8 months?" 9. "And his work?" Sandra hesitated, which was itself an answer. "FP2847 is load-bearing. If Cole leaves under current circumstances, we're looking at 6 months of reconstruction minimum." Elena moved to her desk, sat, set both hands flat on the surface. "Then we don't push him out. We make him uncertain enough to go quiet." She looked up. "And we find out exactly what he's taken before he finds out what we're going to do about it." What Elena did not know, what Sandra had not yet told her, was that the external drive had left the building in Marcus Cole's jacket pocket 40 minutes before the security alert was even reviewed. The gap between when a system records something and when a human reads the record is where most things are either saved or lost. Marcus Cole understood systems, when he had known exactly how wide that gap was. 3 weeks compressed into the space between 2 breaths. Priya's apartment in Northeast Portland became the working room, her dining table covered in printed HR data, a second monitor borrowed from her sister running queries Marcus wrote on the spot, coffee going cold in mugs nobody remembered to drink. They worked around her schedule and his, which meant late evenings and one full Saturday where Maya sat on Priya's couch doing homework and periodically looking up to ask questions neither of them could answer quickly. Raymond O'Sea's office was in a building on Southwest Broadway that smelled like old paper and central heating and the specific gravity of accumulated consequence. He was 58, broad-shouldered, with the unhurried authority of someone who had stood in enough rooms where the other side had more money and had learned that patience was a form of precision. He read Marcus's report in its entirety before speaking. 47 pages. He turned each one the way you turn pages when you are actually reading, not skimming, tracking every footnote. When he finished, he set it down and looked at Marcus the way a craftsman looks at work done in a tradition he respects. You're a software engineer. Yes. The statistical modeling in here. The chain of custody documentation for the digital evidence. The metadata preservation protocol. O.C. tapped the corner of the report. I've worked with forensic specialists for 30 years who don't produce this. I know how their system stores data because I built the part of it that does the storing, Marcus said. The logs are immutable. They can't edit what was accessed, by whom, or and when, not without leaving a trace that looks exactly like editing. I used module FP2847 to pull records the company thought had been archived into inaccessibility. They made a system too good to hide things in. They just didn't know who had built it. Priya watched O'Sea's face as this landed. O'Sea leaned back. I need to tell you what you're walking into. Whitmore is not an isolated case. The same HR vendor, or the same legal firm, Kellerman and Associates, the same suppression protocol appears in 4 subsidiary companies across 11 states. We've been building a federal file for 8 months. What we've been missing is someone currently inside the system. Someone with technical standing to authenticate the documents in a federal proceeding. He paused. Someone whose credibility cannot be dismissed as disgruntled. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Outside, if the October rain had started, the persistent, indifferent Portland kind that doesn't announce itself. They will not dismiss quietly, he said. They'll build a case against me, whatever they can find or manufacture. Yes. They'll try to make the story about me instead of about the 73. They will try very hard. Marcus opened his phone. Maya's contact photo, the science fair, the clipboard, that expression of ferocious and unbothered seriousness. And he turned the screen so O'Sea could see it briefly, then set it face down. My dignity is not a bargaining chip, he said, and neither is hers. Tell me what you need. The suspension notice arrived on a Monday, delivered by a woman from HR who did not make eye contact and held the envelope with 2 fingers as though it might be contagious. Unauthorized access to restricted files, NDA review pending, 4 weeks paid administrative leave effective immediately. The badge reader outside his floor beeped red when he tested it on the way out, which was either a coincidence or a message, and probably both. Sandra Cruz's office was glass-walled, transparent in the architectural way that implies openness while functioning as surveillance. She sat behind her desk with 2 security personnel stationed near the door in the particular arrangement that means the meeting is a formality and the outcome was decided before you arrived. Marcus listened to the charges with the attention of someone taking notes they will use later. When she finished, he looked at her directly. The shared archive folder was accessible under my standard Level 2 permissions, as documented in my employment contract, Appendix C, Section 4. The access timestamp, the file path, the permission level, all of that is in the system logs. The same logs I have copies of outside your network, or with cryptographic hashes established 3 weeks before today. He stood. I understand you need to protect what you've built here, but I want you to understand something clearly. I have already protected what I've built." Sandra's expression did not break, but her hands, which had been resting open on the desk, closed slowly into a composed and deliberate stillness that was its own kind of reaction. That evening, Marcus called Osei from his apartment, Maya asleep down the hall, in the checking account now showing the first paycheck gap beginning to form like a hairline crack. "They moved faster than I expected," Marcus said. "They're afraid. I have 11 days before rent is a problem." "I know. Marcus, I need you to hear this clearly. What you've built in that report, what you've documented, companies with 40 times Whitmore's legal budget have not been able to assemble this kind of case from the inside. You are not a complainant. You are the architect of a federal evidentiary record. That changes what this is." Marcus said nothing for a moment. Through the wall, he could just hear Maya's sound machine. The ocean setting, the one she'd slept to since she was 3. Diane had bought it. 30 years, he said quietly. "That's what you said. This network has been running 30 years. First documented instance in our file is 1994. Kellerman and Associates Incorporated 1993, and the timing is not coincidental. 8,400 workers, estimated. Conservative estimate." Marcus exhaled slowly. The number had a physical weight, not abstract but specific, the way $94 in a checking account is specific, the way $847 rent is specific, the way 73 buried complaints are specific. Numbers that represent the distance between what was promised and what was delivered. What's the next step? Federal Commission hearing, 22 days. And I need you present as a technical witness. And I need you to be the one who walks into that room, not hiding, not performing, but exactly as you are. Osei paused. Exactly as you've always been, which was already more than enough. 3 days before the hearing, Marcus made the pasta again. Maya's choice, which meant the sauce came from a jar and the noodles were slightly overcooked and the meal was perfect in the way of things chosen freely. She watched him across the table the way she'd been watching him for weeks. That particular steady attention of a child cataloging a parent for safekeeping. "Are you scared?" she asked. Yes. She considered this with the seriousness it deserved. Is it the kind of scared that stops you, or the kind that means it matters? He looked at her across the small table with its water ring stains and its unsteady leg and its 4 years of breakfasts and homework and hard conversations. "The second kind," he said. Maya nodded, satisfied, and wound more pasta onto her fork. That night, after she was asleep, his phone lit up with a message from a number he didn't recognize. He read it once, read it again. Then he screenshotted it, forwarded it to Osei with a single line of context, and typed his reply to the unknown number. The message he'd received said, "Don't come to the hearing. We know where your daughter goes to school." What he sent back was 2 words. "See you there." But he set the phone down on the kitchen table next to the photograph on the refrigerator, Diane mid-laugh, permanent and uncontainable, and sat for a long time in the quiet. Not planning, not calculating, just sitting with the full weight of what tomorrow was going to require, and finding that he could hold it. He chose the uniform deliberately, not as disguise, as argument. The pale blue maintenance uniform with M. Decol stitched in thread above the left pocket was the costume the building had always assigned him, the visual language that made men in boardrooms look through a person rather than at them. He was going to walk through that door one last time inside their assumption, and then he was going to dismantle it from the inside, which was, he understood, what he had always done best. Osei had reviewed the plan twice and said nothing to discourage it. Priya had looked at him for a long moment and then nodded once, the kind of nod that means I understand what you're saying and I believe you can carry it. The cart wheels squeaked against marble. 12 people arranged around glass. Elena Whitmore, at the head of the table, composed and precise. A woman who had built something real and protected something indefensible with equal competence. She didn't look up. Neither did anyone else. The room continued its business around him the way rooms always had. Then he stopped, set the handle down, and spoke. What happened in the 60 seconds after Marcus said his name was not noise? It was the specific silence of people recalibrating. The cognitive gap between a category they had assigned and a reality that refused to fit inside it. 2 board members looked at each other. One looked at the door. Derek Haynes, seated third from the left, went the particular color of someone whose internal accounting has just come due. Marcus opened the laptop and connected it to the room's display. The main screen filled with the complaint log. 73 entries, 6 years, 2 names cycling through the resolution column like a signature on a document that was never meant to be read aloud. This is the suppression record your HR department maintained from 2018 through last month. His voice carried the room without effort. Not because he raised it, but because the room had gone quiet enough to let it. Each entry represents a person who came forward through proper channels and was told their concern had been reviewed. Kellerman and Associates drafted the resolution language. The same firm drafted the NDAs for 12 settlements between 2015 and 2024, all of which the DOJ invalidated this morning under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. He advanced the slide. The screen showed a network map, Whitmore at the center, of 4 subsidiaries branching outward across 11 states. The same HR vendor and legal firm threading through all of them like load-bearing infrastructure. This network has been operating since 1994, 30 years. Estimated 8,400 workers affected. Estimated $2.1 billion in suppressed wages and blocked advancement across the system. He paused, not for effect, but because the next sentence needed to stand on its own. Every number on this screen came out of your own data, stored in your own system, extracted using the architecture I built for you, and that you have been running without acknowledgement or adequate compensation for 2 years. Derek pushed back from the table. You don't have the authority to... I have a federal subpoena, Exhibit 34, and 3 DOJ agents in the hallway. Marcus looked at Derek with something that was not contempt and not forgiveness, but a clear-eyed accounting. Why, you have the right to call your attorney before they come in. I'd suggest you use it. The door opened. Osei entered from the rear, 2 agents beside him. Sandra Cruz rose halfway from her chair and then seemed to make a decision about what rising would mean and sat back down. Priya stood in the doorway behind the agents, having spent the previous 3 weeks doing work that would never appear in any headline. Witness coordination, document authentication, or the quiet structural labor that makes confrontation possible. One of the agents addressed Sandra Cruz by name. Read the charges: obstruction of justice, conspiracy to violate civil rights under federal statute. The language was procedural, flat, and carried 30 years of accumulated weight in every syllable. The room cleared in stages. When it was done, only two people remained at the glass table: Marcus Cole and Elena Whitmore. She had not moved during the agent's entrance. Al had not made calls, had not performed outrage, had not deployed any of the mechanisms available to a person of her position and legal resources. She sat looking at the network map still displayed on the screen above her, and something in her face was doing the slow, painful work of recognition. Not legal recognition, not strategic recognition, but the kind that happens when a person sees their own choices laid out in aggregate and cannot locate the moment it became what it became. I didn't build this to suppress anyone," she said finally, her voice stripped of its boardroom register. "I built it to survive in a market that didn't want to make room for me either." Marcus considered this. It was true, probably, in the way that many damaging things are true, as origin, not justification. "I know what it costs to build something real when the room wasn't designed for you," he said. "But you used that knowledge to decide who else could be kept out. That's not survival. That's inheritance. You inherited exactly what was done to you and passed it down." She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at her hands. The silence was not comfortable, but it was honest, which was its own rare thing in that room. "The foundation my attorneys are proposing," she said quietly. "Workplace equity auditing. I want OSE's input on the structure." A pause. "And yours, if you're willing." He picked up the laptop. "Have them send the proposal to my firm." He walked out. Behind him, Elena Whitmore remained seated, the network map glowing above her. 30 years of decisions asking to be looked at without the option of looking away. What followed was not a single moment of justice, but a cascade of smaller ones, each consequential, none cinematic. Derek Haynes was escorted from the building by 11:15, and the footage was captured on the same security system that had recorded Marcus 3 weeks earlier, and the symmetry was not lost on anyone paying attention. By end of day, the company's internal messaging channels had gone quiet in the way that precedes significant reorganization, people waiting to understand what the new shape of things would be before committing to language. Priya Nair was appointed interim engineering lead within the week. Her first action was a company-wide memo announcing a full audit of every promotion decision made in the previous 5 years, with independent review for any case involving a pattern of blocked advancement. It was the kind of document that looks administrative until you understand what it's actually saying, which is that the ground rules have changed and the change is permanent. The DOJ investigation expanded over the following months to include all 4 subsidiaries. 11 state attorneys general opened parallel inquiries. Kellerman and Associates surrendered their operating licenses in Oregon and Washington by March. The settlement fund established for affected workers reached $340 million, distributed across cases averaging $47,000 each. Not adequate to return what had been taken, but documented, formal, and real in the way that acknowledgement must be real before anything else can follow. Marcus testified before a federal commission in Washington in December, not as a victim, but as an expert witness, the architect of the evidentiary record, the person who had understood that the system's own precision was the most reliable tool for exposing what had been done inside it. When the panel chair asked why he had published the audit methodology as open source rather than licensing it, his answer was simple and exact. If only those with resources could access the mechanism of accountability, then accountability remained a privilege, and that was precisely the problem they were trying to solve. A newspaper in Portland ran a profile under the headline, "The Engineer Who Built the System That Brought It Down." Priya sent him the link. He read it once, sent it to no one, and went back to work. 8 months after the boardroom, the Oregon coast. Late afternoon light coming in low and gold across the water, the kind of light that makes the Pacific look like it has opinions. Maya ran barefoot at the shoreline, shoes swinging from one hand, chasing something or being chased by something. It was hard to tell. And the sound she was making was not a word, but a general broadcast of presence into open space. Marcus sat on a flat rock above the tide line and watched her. He had thought, in the months of building the case and surviving the suspension and sitting across from Osei's maps of 30-year networks, that the victory would feel like something large. A door opening, a weight removed. What it actually felt like was simpler and stranger, like being allowed to be tired and finding out that underneath the exhaustion there was still something intact. Maya came back up the sand and dropped beside him, breathing hard, a strand of kelp inexplicably in her left hand. "There's a tide pool," she announced, "with like 5 different kinds of things in it." "What kinds of things?" "I don't know their names yet. I'm going to look them up." She leaned against his arm with her full weight, easy and unself-conscious, and looked out at the water. "Bah, when I grow up, I want to do what you do." "Engineering?" "Fixing things that are broken in ways other people can't see yet." She turned to look at him with Diane's eyes in her face, the same angle, or the same uncompromising clarity. "You can teach me that, right?" He put his arm around her shoulders. The ocean moved in and out with the patience of something that has never needed to be anywhere else. "That," he said, "is exactly what I can teach you." Behind them, up the coast road, in a small office with her name on the door and a foundation charter on the wall, Elena Whitmore was in a meeting with 3 people she had previously made it a practice not to hear. She was listening. It was not comfortable. She did it anyway, which was the beginning, if not of redemption, then of something that might eventually become useful. And in Portland, on a floor that had been quiet for too long, 8 engineers opened their email on a Tuesday morning to find letters informing them that their promotion reviews had been independently audited and the decisions reversed. Some of them cried at their desks. Some called people they hadn't spoken to in years. One sent Priya a single line, "I filed a complaint in 2019. I thought I had imagined it." "You didn't," she wrote back, "and we have it on record now." Maya won first place at the Spring Science Fair. The project was a water retention study, controlled variables, 2-week measurement cycle, fully documented methodology. The ribbon was red, and she wore it on her backpack for 11 days before it fell off, which was, by any reasonable measure, exactly long enough.